Hey now, Petey Grizz here. Today I'm going to talk about one of the more simple varieties of Swiss Army knife. It might be possibly the most basic model that Victorinox has out. It's called the Bantam. Well, actually, this one's not called a Bantam. This one is called a Wenger Premier. But for all intents and purposes, it is the same exact thing as a Victorinox Bantam. It just happens to have a Wenger tang stamp on it. I've explained that in other videos, so I'm not going to explain it here. But this is our substitute for a modern Bantam. So the Bantam has key ring, scale tools, nothing on the back, main blade, 84mm overall length, and then we've got the infamous combo tool, can opener, cap lifter, wire stripper, screwdriver. It does it all. Really does. Fantastic tool. So if we go back a little bit farther in history, we get this Bantam. Now, I believe the combo tool dates to sometime in the late 70s, probably 76 to 78. I know Victorinox says it came out in 80, but anybody that's collected these knives knows they came out earlier than that, because I've got earlier knives that have combo tool. But regardless of that, before that, the Bantam just had a clip blade. So this is a 60s Bantam. Notice it has a nickel silver shield, no scale tools, no key ring. We've got the main blade, and on this one on the back we have the famous Victoria Officier Swiss tang stamp, which they used from about 1957 until 1973. And then in lieu of the combo tool, we've got a beautiful clip blade. You know I love my clip blades, especially as a secondary. I actually don't like clip blades as a main blade, but when I got a main spear blade, I want a secondary clip blade. I don't like having two spear blades, two pen blades, whatever you want to call them, two drop points. I love having the secondary clip blade. Now, if we go back a little farther in time, we get to this guy. And this thing is one of my absolute favorites. It came in an absolute pile of junk. I think I got, I don't know, 25. It was a bunch of knives. It was a bunch of terrible knives. But I saw this in the corner and knew I had to go for it, because this is a early 50s Bantam. And what's cool about this is, of course, I don't have another exposed rivet handy. This actually has larger exposed rivets. Usually they have 2.2mm. This has 2.5mm. I don't know why that is, but it's super cool. Another thing you can notice is look how dark the old red is. And that's something you'll only notice if you compare, them directly next to each other. But man, it is so much darker back in the day. It's just beautiful. Notice that the shield is much bolder, thicker, stronger, whatever you want to call it. Certainly looks cool. And otherwise, it's relatively the same. So we've got the main blade now with the 3-line tang stamp, Victorinox, Switzerland stainless. And on the back, we've got Victoria Officier, and this is a tang stamp that dates from about 1952 to 1973. And obviously, it is slightly different than this tang stamp that they started using in 1957, when they went to solid rivet or solid scales without the exposed rivets. And you see the newer one has Officier, has Swiss underneath Officier, but actually it's the exact. It looks very similar. It's very near, if not the exact same tang stamp, with a word added to it. So bong, bong. There goes my Bantams. Next up in this little tour do knives, we've got another little lot, a little 2-knife lot I bought. Come on, you get out of the way. You get out of the way, the Wenger Premier. We're done with you. Boom, right here. Now, you're probably saying, well, that knife's not even finished. It doesn't even have a scales on it. I know, but we'll get to it. It's pretty friggin' cool. So, these two came together. I got these for a cheap price. As usual, I don't mind paying full price, but if I can get a deal, that's just even better, right? So we got a little 2-layer 84mm tourist here. A 234 KUA. So KAU actually. So we've got the small version with the scale tools. That's what the A stands for. The U stands for the bail, shackle, clevis, whatever you want to call it. Notice we've got the aluminum tipped tweezers. The old school toothpick that doesn't have a hump or bump on it or anything like that. On the back, we got a 5-turn corkscrew with the fluting. Up front, we got that reamer. Bam! Gotta have the reamer. I've just been doing a little work to this knife because it was a little beat up. We've got the cap lifter with the sharpened edge for cable ripping inside here. Screwdriver, stripping notch for smaller cables. We've got the Plus Pack can opener, which dates the whole shebang to somewhere between 1953 and 1971, thereabouts, with the 2D Phillips small flathead on there. Then we move on to the main event. This blade had the tip broken off and had a couple chips broken off. She's still a work in progress. I'm going very slowly with it. It actually has a very faint etch on the blade. It says Coutellerie du Mont Blanc, Genève. So I believe that means White Mountain Cutlery in Geneva, Switzerland. Mont Blanc should be White Mountain. I might be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure I'm not, because Blanc is typically white. Blanco is Spanish for white. Blanc I would assume was white in French. Mont is obviously a mountain. But this had a tip broken off, chunks broken at the edge. I kind of restored the shape now. I'm kind of slowly polishing it down. Trying to maintain what's left of the edge, even though it's hard to see on camera. It actually shows up pretty good in person, but you can kind of catch it right there. There it is, Coutellerie du Mont Blanc, Geneva. And you see, here's where, this is what the blade looked like all the way up here. There was just chunks missing out of it. Victoria Officier Suisse. So this puts this somewhere between, 1961 and 1973 or something like that. Who knows? But that's not the point. The main point was this guy. And I know you're like, how can that be the main point? It doesn't even have scales. Look at that piece of junk. Oh, this thing is anything but a piece of junk. Somebody thought it was a piece of junk, but it's not. So what we got here is a little 2-layer with scissors. So first you're thinking, oh, that's a golfer, right? So we've got 84mm scissors. Bam. Still got that single leaf spring intact. That's outstanding. A little tight. Needs a little work, but it also doesn't have any scales on it. So the scales do add some rigidity. The whole thing kind of flexes when it doesn't have scales on it. Next up, we've got the main blade. She's seen better days too. These two came together, so I think the same guy worked on both of these knives, which is why they both look terrible. Again, we got the Victoria Officier Swiss tank stamp. At least this blade has the full tip on it. This I just got to polish, and that'll be perfectly fine. And then we've got a clip blade back here. So we've got a golfer with a clip blade and a bail. Not only that, but what else does it have? It's got, ooh, look at that. It's got the long back nail file. That is super cool. I've wanted a golfer, or an any 84 really, but particularly a golfer with this feature for a while. That's the kind of premium feature that you would expect to be on a golfer, and it certainly adds a level of coolness. Now here's where we go off the rails. What the hell is this doing here? This is the old square Phillips with the file on the back. Now, the golfer did not come with this, and I can tell somebody drilled out this pivot pin right here. You see how that's domed on this side, or spun. That's called a spun thing. I just learned that recently. That's called a spun rivet, and basically it's because there's an impact machine, a little hammer that spins, that rotates is on a slight angle and gives it that perfectly domed head. And then here's what happens when somebody just smacks it with a hammer. That looks like more like when I do them. I'm actually, if I can do them always that good, I'd be quite happy with it. But I mean, it serves a purpose fine. It just doesn't look as elegant as this one. So somebody drilled that out and replaced the corkscrew with the Phillips driver. I think I'm going to finish like that. And then I suspect they didn't know what to do next, because I imagine they just busted the scales off and then put that screwdriver on there. And then we're like, how do we get the scales back on with the bail? Which I know how to do, but I'm not going to tell you. Meh. I'm kidding. I'll eventually get around to making some videos showing how to do this stuff. It's just that when I get in the middle of doing something, like this doing videos does not come naturally to me. So often I'm like halfway through something and I'm like, oh wow, that would have been great to video that, except I'm already like done now, so I can either start all over or just screw it and get the job done, and then I just finish the job and show you the end results. So, but I'm trying to get better about that and actually film some work in progress. So that's a little project we got to go up for. We've got the 50s Bantam. We've got the 60s Tourist. We've got the 60s Golfer with long nail file and the modded Phillips driver. Although, what do? Now you don't. See, that mod would make more sense to me if it had the combo tool or even just the flathead screwdriver, because then you'd have a flathead and a Phillips. I guess Wenger did have a model called the Hobbyist that was essentially the same thing, except in lieu of the clip blade, it had a nail file, and then on the back it had a Phillips driver. And it's called the Modelist or Modeler or something like that. And I have no idea why. Like, again, you know, back in the day, Phillips screws weren't as common, so you would definitely want to have both. You'd be more likely to get away with just having a flathead than just having a Phillips. So Phillips would have been for very special fasteners. Anyway, I don't even know what I'm ranting about anymore. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Peter Grizz out.